They laughed. At first, it was just a few giggles, the kind you hear in every corporate cafeteria during lunch hour. But soon, it grew louder. Heads turned, fingers pointed, and at the center of it all stood an old janitor named Ravi, holding a dented metal lunchbox that looked like it had survived 100 years. No one knew what was inside. No one cared. They just thought it looked funny, out of place among their shiny lunch containers and designer briefcases. But that day, inside that gleaming glass building, something extraordinary was about to happen. Something that would make even the CEO of the company, a man known for his unshakable composure, break down in tears before everyone. Friends, have you ever seen a moment where pride meets humility and loses? That's what this story is about. Because sometimes the most ordinary people carry the most extraordinary stories. And sometimes the things we mock become the very things that open our eyes. As laughter echoed through the cafeteria, Ravi didn't flinch. He simply placed his lunchbox gently on the table, the same way he probably had for years, and sat down in silence. But when the CEO walked in and asked, "What's so funny?" the room froze. And when he reached for that old metal box and opened it, what he saw inside made him fall to his knees, tears streaming down his face. So what was inside that lunchbox? Stay with me, because this one moment changed everything. Every morning, before the sun even rose above the skyline, Ravi arrived at the building. The guards greeted him with half-hearted nods, the receptionists barely noticed him, and yet he always smiled. He carried the same things every day: a worn-out broom, a faded keychain with just 2 keys, and that old metal lunchbox that seemed to hold more history than food. He never complained, never rushed. While others clocked in with tired faces and endless stress, Ravi hummed quietly as he swept the marble floors. To him, work wasn't humiliation, it was honor. But people didn't see that. They saw an old man who moved too slowly, who wore the same washed-out uniform, whose shoes squeaked with every step. In a place where image meant everything, Ravi was invisible. Every afternoon, he would sit alone by the far window, unwrap his lunch, and stare at the city skyline as if searching for something or someone. No one knew what he thought about during those moments. Sometimes a new intern would whisper, "Why does he bring that same lunchbox every day?" Others would laugh, "Maybe it's his family heirloom." If only they knew, they weren't entirely wrong. Because inside that rusty metal box lay something more valuable than any of their designer watches or shiny badges. Something connected not just to Ravi's heart, but to the company's very past. Something he carried not out of habit, but out of love. And soon, everyone would know why. It was Friday afternoon. The cafeteria buzzed with laughter, the smell of coffee, and the sound of phones clicking. A group of young employees sat around the largest table, led by Aiden, a sharp-dressed manager known more for his arrogance than his achievements. When Ravi walked in with his metal lunchbox, the room quieted for a moment. Then the whispers began. "There he is again," someone snickered. "Maybe that box is older than him," another joked. Aiden smirked, pulling out his phone. "Come on, guys, let's make him famous," he said, snapping a photo. Ravi didn't react. He simply placed his box on the corner table, just as he always did. But the laughter grew. "What do you think he eats from that thing? Rust?" Ravi's eyes softened, but he stayed silent. Then the doors opened. Mr. Collins, the CEO himself, walked in. His presence drew instant respect. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. He noticed the group's nervous laughter and asked calmly, "What's so funny?" Aiden, still half laughing, held up the lunchbox. "Just this old thing, sir. You won't believe he still eats from it." Mr. Collins looked at it, long and hard. His face didn't show amusement, just curiosity. "Whose is it?" he asked quietly. Ravi raised his hand. Without another word, the CEO said, "May I see what's inside?" And in that instant, Every sound in the cafeteria vanished, replaced by a silence thick enough to feel. The CEO's fingers touched the metal lid. It was cold, dented, and carried the faint smell of oil and time. For a moment he hesitated, as if something inside him already knew this wasn't just a lunchbox. The room held its breath. When the latch clicked open, everyone leaned closer. Inside, there was no food. No rice, no curry, no sandwich. Instead, neatly wrapped in a faded cloth, lay a small bundle of letters, a few old photographs, and a bronze medal so worn it barely caught the light. Then came the letters. The first line of one read, "Papa, today I fixed one of the machines all by myself. Someday, I'll make you proud." Ravi lowered his eyes. The laughter that once filled the cafeteria had vanished completely. The CEO picked up the medal. It bore the company's old logo. His expression changed. His hands trembled. "This name," he whispered, tracing the engraved letters. "Arav Ravikumar." The cafeteria fell still. Ravi's son. And then, like a ghost from the past, recognition washed over Mr. Collins' face. He looked at Ravi, and his eyes widened in disbelief. He knew that name. He remembered that face. Because years ago, at the company's old factory, a terrible accident had occurred. And that young man, the boy in the photograph, was the reason Mr. Collins was still alive. But no one in that room knew it. Not yet. Mr. Collins stood frozen, the photo trembling in his hands. The cafeteria around him blurred. Faces melted into shadows, and his mind drifted years into the past. He was no CEO back then, just a young, ambitious factory manager desperate to climb the ladder. It was a stormy evening when it happened, the explosion that tore through the old manufacturing plant. He could still hear the screams, the alarms, the fire swallowing the metal walls. Workers were trapped inside. Everyone ran except one man, a young technician, Arav Ravikumar. Collins remembered shouting, "Get out! The tank's going to blow!" But Arav ran the other way, toward the flames. He pulled 2 workers out before the second blast hit. The impact threw Collins to the ground, debris falling everywhere. The next thing he remembered was waking up in a hospital bed, alive. Arav wasn't so lucky. The company paid the family quietly, called it an accident, and buried the story. Promotions followed. Collins moved up the ranks. But guilt, it never left him. And now, standing before that same father, the janitor everyone mocked, the truth hit him harder than any explosion ever could. Tears welled in his eyes. His voice cracked as he whispered, "He saved me. Your son saved my life." Gasps echoed across the cafeteria. Ravi looked up for the first time, eyes glistening, calm, humble. Collins sank to his knees. He wasn't crying out of pity. He was crying because every success, every achievement, every breath he took since that day was a gift paid for by the life of this man's son. And for years, he had walked past the father of his savior without ever knowing. Mr. Collins slowly rose to his feet, still holding the photograph. His voice, usually strong and commanding, trembled as he spoke. "Everyone," he said quietly, "this man you've been mocking, this is Ravi Kumar, and the young man in these photos was his son, Arav, a technician who gave his life to save others during the factory explosion 10 years ago." No one moved. Forks lay untouched. Phones lowered. The air felt heavy. "He didn't just save me," Collins continued, his eyes misty. "He saved 6 workers that day. And if it weren't for him, none of this." He gestured to the shining glass walls, the polished floor, the entire company, "would even exist." The silence that followed was deafening. Aiden, the same manager who laughed the loudest, now stared at the floor, shame burning his cheeks. One by one, the others did too. Ravi looked around, his voice gentle. "Sir, please, you don't owe me anything. My son did what he believed was right. I only wanted to work, to stay near the place he gave his life for." Tears slipped down Colin's face. "Ravi, you should have been honored years ago." Ravi smiled faintly. "Honor isn't in awards, sir. It's in living honestly." The cafeteria stood still. The same man they mocked now seemed larger than life, not because of his job, but because of his heart. The very next week, the company held a special ceremony in the main lobby, the same lobby Ravi had cleaned every morning for years. Employees gathered in silence, dressed not in formality, but in respect. At the front stood a new plaque, shining beneath the morning sun. It read, "In memory of Ravi Kumar, a true hero who chose others before himself." Mr. Collins stepped to the microphone, his voice firm but emotional. "Everyone," he said, "for years we celebrated profits and awards, but today we honor something far greater: humanity. This company stands because of sacrifice, and it's time we remember who made it possible." He turned to Ravi. "From this day forward, this hall will bear your son's name. And you, Mr. Ravi, are not just our janitor. You're the heart of this company." Ravi folded his hands humbly. "Sir, thank you. But if it's all right, I'd like to keep my job. Sweeping these floors keeps me close to him. It reminds me that no work is small." The hall filled with quiet tears. For the first time, every employee truly understood what dignity looked like and what it meant to serve with love. As the sun set through the glass walls, Ravi picked up his broom again. The golden light reflected off the new plaque, his son's name shining proudly beside the company logo. He smiled softly, wiping the floor just beneath it, the same way he always had. No spotlight, no applause, just quiet pride. Friends, it's easy to judge people by what they wear, where they work, or how they live. But behind every humble face may lie a story of courage, sacrifice, or love that we'll never understand unless we look closer. Ravi never needed titles or recognition. His strength was in his humility, his wealth in his heart. So next time you see someone others overlook, remember this story. Share it if it touched your heart, and tell us in the comments, what does true respect mean to you? Because sometimes heroes wear uniforms no one notices.